we had a race this weekend in Texas. Kevin Harvick dominated. Yeah, it's a so-so race. I know you listened to it in the deer stand. Was that what you were doing, or what?
No, I was listening to you. I was listening to NBC. I had the NBC.
Right. Telecast.
Yeah.
So you listened to the race.
Yeah, a good bit.
First stage was crazy. All these cautions. We had 6 cautions, and then no cautions in stage 2, and then Kevin Harvick dominated stage 3. And interesting. Denny went in 24 points above the cut line, leaves 20-something, 22 points below the cut line. Pretty crazy race for a lot of people. And let's see. Before intentional spin by Bubba Wallace has everybody up in arms. Was getting a text from a couple drivers after the race about that and what NASCAR should do. And then
you were, or he was?
I got a couple.
You were,
yeah. And then Larson, I think, said something in his post race about maybe NASCAR stepping in. I think Tony Stewart said that NASCAR shouldn't step in, that they shouldn't be involved in that. And he threw in also, while we're at it, they shouldn't be involved in the yellow line rule as well at Daytona Talladega, which I thought was great. And I tend to agree. I guess that they shouldn't, go into that judgment call area. And I only think the reason why is because it's hard to trust them to make that call right every time. And the question is like, obviously, it's easy for me to sit there in the booth, and I said it. He spun out on purpose. All right? Now, I'm not driving the car, but with my eyes and my judgment, my perception, I think that's what happened, right? But are we wanting sports to be judgment calls, right? Do you want? I've always liked black and white rules, right or wrong, yes and no. I don't really like someone's interpretation playing a role in the decision, right? And so I almost feel like in this case that would have to be what would happen. People would have to interpret, okay, I interpret this as intentional spin, and then there's going to be disagreement and agreement and also the different series, Xfinity, Cup, and Truck, have different directors in the tower, different people in there that are making those decisions for each series. And that's why there's a little bit of ebb and flow of decision making inconsistency from race to race, from between. If you'll go to and watch a race weekend where there's Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup, they may call a yellow line rule or a guy blocking below the yellow line one way in a truck race and then different in a Cup race. Well, that's because there's different people in the tower that are governing that series, right? And their interpretation of what that block was, or what was intentional, or who was wrong or right, is different from Saturday to Sunday. So you're going to have that little bit of inconsistencies in those type of judgment calls, and I think that you have the same sort of uproar, I guess, if you went into deciding whether somebody had an intentional spin or not. I feel like that the best way for this to go is for the drivers to police it themselves. If it screwed over Larson and a couple other guys, then they should go to Bubba and say, Bubba, you know what? I know you're trying to do something good to help yourself. We've all done it. But that ruined my race, and I'm trying to race for a championship. And maybe next time Bubba makes a different decision, or maybe he doesn't, right? But there's some things in the garage that sort of police themselves through the teams, drivers, the crew chiefs, and that I think is one of them. When things sort of get out between the lines or off the blacktop, when things sort of go awry, sometimes the drivers have to sort of police it back. Maybe somebody speaks up. Maybe one of those guys that everybody trusts goes to Bubba, or whoever's intentionally spinning. Right? We've all done it. We've all done it at some point, sometime. I think Joe Logano did it the week before at Martinsville. Had a flat tire, turned his car around, trying to get a yellow. If he pits and doesn't bring out a yellow, if he just comes gingerly to pit road and we go green, he goes 2 laps down instead of maybe 1 or maybe none. So he's that's a driver trying to do something desperate to save himself. And I don't like NASCAR trying to get in the middle of that and trying to handle that.
But they have before. There's precedent of them doing it.
Well, let's name a couple of those.
Well, the one that sticks out is that's glaring is the one from Richmond where Michael Waltrip Racing brought out a caution to really affect the race. Right?
Okay, so in that regard, in that sense, they never. I don't think that they ever went after the idea of an intentional spin. They went after the radio chatter, one of their cars pitting multiple times to get up, to drop down through the standings. They went after really the sequence of events after Clint spun out. They never, I think, went to Clint or solely put the spotlight on did Clint spin, did Clint not spin. That was never really, in my mind, in that experience, the discussion.
I thought it was it was the team order.
The direction.
The team order to cause a caution.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that, we all, as the public, court of opinion went after, Clint scratching his itch and all that.
That's right.
Right. So the court of public opinion formed that idea that, Clint spun out on purpose, and then this happened, that happened, that happened. I think Brian Vickers was asked to come to pit road for no damn reason at all. And then there was a lot of radio chatter that was easy to piece together what was going on there. And I think that nobody ever went back and said, you know what, we're going to penalize Clint Boyer for spinning out intentionally. That never happened. There was never I have to disagree that there was a precedent set for intentional spinning at that moment. Now, there has been times when guys have stopped on the racetrack to cause cautions, and they've gotten in trouble. They've gotten called to the hauler. If you have a flat tire and you just park the car,
well, that's
the same thing in my mind as intentionally spinning out. You're causing a yellow. You're trying to stop the race so that you can no longer be lapped and get to pit road with minimal collateral damage to your race, right? And so that has happened before. I was penalized for spinning out intentionally, but I got out of the car and bragged about it, and that's a different scenario than what happened
Bristol?
at Martinsville.
Martinsville, Bristol.
At Bristol.
Bristol, right. You got called to the hauler. That's the one where you and the Aries. I got you.
So that was no, that was different.
That was a different one.
Bristol, yeah. But I just feel like that there's not a precedent set for intentional spinning. It's something that's probably happened a lot throughout the sport, and it probably will happen a lot more. I don't think that we need a rule, or I don't think we need NASCAR governing. I think that that's something where the drivers get together and say, hey, what are we doing here? All right?
I agree with that. I like that approach to it. I think that for it to really matter, this is just my opinion. You can tell me it's completely out there, but it needs to be drivers that weren't completely affected by the outcome. In other words, somebody, like you said, trusted drivers, right? Somebody that doesn't like the look of the sport. Like it's an integrity issue, not, oh, you screwed my race issue. Because, of course, anybody that had their race screwed, like Kyle Larson did, is not going to be happy with Bubba Wallace. Mm-hmm. The question is, are you not happy with Bubba Wallace if it didn't affect your race whatsoever, if it's an integrity issue? And then maybe it'll change. Maybe it won't, but I'm saying is that to me that matters more than, oh, you screwed up my race, because that means you're just taking it situationally. Yeah. That's not a legit beef. But so anyways, that's just one of my thoughts there.
Well, if we are going to hold NASCAR accountable for throwing bogus yellows, then as a driver on the racetrack, I mean, again, I know I've done it. Come at me. I'm guilty of doing it, and everybody is. I think that you would have. I think if Larson came up to Bubba and said, "Hey, I'm in this championship battle. I just pitted. I was running in the top 5, having a great day, and that sucked." And I don't know that. I can't expect Bubba to go into every race going, I don't want to ruin somebody's day. What could be happening to this guy and that guy, and I don't want to screw somebody over. It's not going to imprint in his mind to think about Kyle Larson every time he has a flat.
How can he?
Right? But I think if he could understand how that affected somebody who's in a real serious situation to try to race for that championship, maybe a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to race for a title. And I like your idea as well, Mike, is adding in a trusted veteran, somebody that, and this is not to single out Bubba. This is just maybe the press, something going forward as far as how to be handling that situation.
I don't know that they got a trusted veteran to be honest with that would carry that much weight. I mean, Harvick maybe, I guess.
Yeah, I think
is that right?
Yeah, Harvick. I don't know. Jimmy Johnson.
You're right. There are several.
There's several guys in there. The other thing that was interesting this past weekend, and I don't know if you guys, y'all probably didn't see it, and I don't know if this is that big a deal, but it pissed me off when it happened. During the drivers' intros on Sunday, on the big giant screen on the back straightaway, so there's a driver's intro stage, and they're walking out of that stage facing the front grandstands. So behind them on this big screen was a bunch of one-liners that were terrible. Like Parker Klingerman came out to driver's introduction. Hey, Parker Klingerman from such and such town, starting in 30 whatever, and driving the da-da-da. And then on the big house it said, Parker Klingerman, even wrecks on iRacing.
Whoa, really? Are you serious?
That was a nice one.
Oh, man, they were mean?
They were very mean. Some of them pretty bad. Like Garrett Smithley's Already in the Way or something like that. That was his. They were really...
Oh, wow.
Aggressive.
That is aggressive.
Sort of roast-worthy.
Yeah.
And so, all right. It popped up on my Twitter. One of the journalists down in the media center was like, man, that's strange. Those things are weird. Whoever wrote those had some balls. And I'm sitting there in the TV booth watching it. The drivers don't see it. They're coming out. And this isn't about hurting the drivers' feelings. They don't care, right? They're going to run a race. It's more about perception, all right? And so the drivers are coming out to getting introduced, and then there's these one-liners on the big house that only the people in the stands and can see, and they're really bad and aggressive. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what are we doing? Like, what are we building the sport up, or are we just tearing it down?
That's such a parental approach. It's like, you say to your kids, did that build somebody up or did that tear them down? What did you accomplish with that? Yeah.
Okay. And somebody on my social media timeline is like, oh, get over it, man. Are we going to get butthurt about everything that happens? I mean, these drivers, if it hurts their feelings, they need to have thicker skin, and it's not really about that at all. I'm not worried about the driver's feelings. It's more about perception of, all right, imagine, 1987 All-Star race. Remember that brawl they had in that race? How great that was for the sport. Probably not good for Bill Elliott, but imagine the intros. Dale Earnhardt from Kannapolis, North Carolina, wrecks everybody. Terry Labonte, Corpus Christi, Texas, can't drive a nail. I mean, why would we imagine those intros happening during the spectacle of the pre-race at Daytona for the 500, an honored traditional event, right? You go through the sport, you go through the season with all this pride and excitement and trying to. We're working so damn hard to change a perception of the package, whether the racing's good, whether we have great personalities. I mean, we're busting our ass. Everybody, the drivers, the industry, and then we have something like that. I mean, it was just a small thing, right? And it's not, and only a tiny, group of people saw it.
Okay, but let me ask you, were any of them personal, or were they all driving?
I would say they were personal. There was a couple in there personal. I wish.
Oh, man.
Go ahead.
That sort of reminds me of
some of them were pretty personal.
California Speedway made that big mistake a few years ago, letting the fans online just submit superlatives.
Yeah.
And it got disgusting.
Yeah.
And it was a PR nightmare for them. Right. It was disgusting.
Well, I don't even remember that. See, so this probably isn't going to be remembered by anybody either. But when I go to Texas, I sort of have my guard up. You know what I mean? Back when me and Teresa were sort of having a disagreement or a public sort of quarrel about, whether I was going to stay at DEI or leave, they had billboards on the highway outside the racetrack about the wicked stepmother and all that stuff. And it was uncomfortable. And I felt at times over the line, and personal. I don't have a problem with them taking Denny and Joey and saying, hey, here's two guys that got into it last week. Buy a damn ticket. But some of those things I thought kind of were personal to the drivers, and it's not up to me to decide that. It's up to that individual driver to decide whether it's personal or not. But I just wonder, is that helping us, or is that, because everything for me is really about trying to create health in the sport and doing things that are good for it. And I don't know if I would have chosen that path had I been putting on a race that day. I would have been talking about how all these guys are warriors and they're going to go out there and raise hell, and we're lucky to be here today, and it's it's going to be a battle, and this is a playoff race, and there's a championship on the line, and so it was only fitting when about 12 laps into the race, the sign blew off the fence.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
So
karma.
Yeah, maybe spend a little more time attaching those signs and coming up with clever quips.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. Anyhow, I will say, man, with all that said, Eddie Gossage is one of the best promoters that we have in the sport. And I don't know, there's a lot of people involved in how that race gets put on and all those sort of decisions to do that. Somebody thought that was a good idea, and I doubt it was Eddie. I don't know, maybe it was, but I doubt it. But somebody thought, you know what, let's do something funny and try to entertain somebody, and it just was out of touch.
Maybe it was.
Yeah, absolutely.